When someone mentions the word geoglyph, most people immediately think of the famed Nazca lines, a series of shapes carved into the soil of the Nazca Desert in southern Peru at some time between 200 BCE and 800 BCE. However, approximately 500 miles from Nazca, there lies an arguably even more impressive and esoteric set of geoglyphs that inexplicably get less attention from the public at large. The Atacama Desert of northern Chile is an inhospitable landscape covering an area of about 49,000 square miles on the Pacific coast of the country, just west of the Andes Mountains. The Atacama is one of the most arid environments on the Earth. In fact, it is the only desert on the planet that receives less rainfall than the polar desert regions, and so alien are parts of its terrain that it has even been used in films and television series to mimic the surface of Mars. But stretched across a vast area of the Atacama is an extraordinary array of geoglyphs, whose number, size and complexity dwarf those seen at the better-known Nazca site. Thus far, archaeologists have discovered a staggering 5,000 geoglyphs, scattered at various locations all around the Atacama Desert, covering an area of nearly 58,000 square miles, 580 times larger than the region containing the Nazca lines. The Atacama geoglyphs differ from the Nazca lines in other ways as well. Though the forms seen in Nazca are largely straight lines or geometric shapes, with a few zoomorphic representations scattered throughout, the Atacama depictions are far more varied. Common shapes are also seen on textiles and pottery of the period, such as concentric circles, parallel lines, crosses and rectangles are in evidence of Atacama. But there are also numerous examples of a distinct stepped rhomboid design and a bewildering assortment of animal and human designs. Among the animals represented in geoglyph form at Atacama are snakes, toads and lizards. All of these creatures were associated with amphibious gods and religious rituals associated with water. There are also several different types of birds depicted, such as eagles, seagulls, flamingos, and the large flightless avians known as rheas, as well as monkeys, foxes, and various sea creatures, including dolphins, sharks, and other species of local fish. One of the most prevalent zoomorphic images, though, is that of the llama or alpaca, and specifically several sites at Atacama illustrate entire caravans of llamas etched into the desert, with some geoglyphs comprising more than 6 dozen llama drawings in a row. The frequency with which this particular tableau appears has suggested to researchers one possible function of the massive desert drawings, which will be discussed shortly. The human figures at Atacama are extremely varied as well, with the majority of them being generally naturalistic in form and portraying people engaged in everyday activities, such as fishing or hunting, having sex, or participating in religious rituals. In a few regions, though, the human figures are far more stylized. For example, some earlier geoglyphs located in the Tarapacá region are characterized by people with concave-shaped bodies and crested heads, while relatively more recent illustrations from the plains of Arica portray large, box-like humans with bizarrely long legs and a peculiar square head, a style known as Utah. It is this style, in fact, which characterizes the most famous of all the geoglyphs at Atacama, that of the so-called Atacama Giant, known by locals as El Gigante de Parapaca. This enormous figure, nearly 400 feet tall and probably constructed between 1000 and 1400 CE, lies on the side of a hill known as the Cerro Unitas, near the town of Huara, and is the largest anthropomorphic figure from prehistoric times that has been discovered on the planet so far. The giant is a strange, boxy configuration with a long rectangular body and horizontal bars protruding from the hips and knees. The elbows of the figure are bent, making it appear as though the rounded, mitt-like hands are raised. The head is also square, with rectangles serving as the eyes and mouth, and additional rectangular bars extending from it like a sort of headdress. 4 bars, or rays, from the top, and 4 on each side of the head. The hills surrounding the Atacama Giant also contain other, less distinct markings that are mainly geometric in nature, comprised mostly of rectangles, lines, and concentric circles. Sadly, part of the feet and head of the Atacama Giant were damaged in early 2019 when 3 tourists drove over the geoglyph in an all-terrain vehicle. While the ultimate purpose of the Atacama Giant is up for debate, most researchers suspect that it may be a representation of a rain god worshipped in the region during the period, and that the lines emerging from the top and sides of its head not only suggested its godlike status, but also served to align with the moon, which would have helped ancient people keep track of the time of year and prepare for the rainy seasons so that they could ensure the best possible outcome for their crops. The most common deity associated with the giant is Tiyunupa Tarapaka, the central deity of the Amara people, who may have lived in the region for as long as 5,000 years. Also known as the Viracocha, the deity's image can be found on several temples in the region, and he's often portrayed with sun rays emerging from his head in a crown formation and holding thunderbolts in his hands. In a similar vein, some researchers have conjectured that the giant may in fact be a depiction of a pre-Incan shaman, with the shapes on either side of him symbolizing an arrow and a bag, and the squareness of the head and protruding rays, the jaguar mask that such shamans are thought to have worn. By the same token, many of the other figures may have also had spiritual significance, representing specific deities or astronomical importance, corresponding with the alignment of heavenly bodies and serving as a sort of calendar or timepiece. Some archaeologists have even floated the idea that the glyphs might be evidence of some type of symbolic language, and those of a more interstellar bent have proposed that, just as in the case of the Nazca lines, the Atacama forms might be extraterrestrial in origin, or at least depict alien beings as interpreted by the humans who created the drawings. As evidence of this, some have pointed out that the lines emanating from the heads of some of the humanoid figures resemble antennae, and the shape of several of the other glyphs are vague enough that they too could suggest spacecraft or other airborne vehicles. Indeed, while the Atacama geoglyphs are beautiful enough on their own, and likely served a spiritual or religious function to the people who made them, just as the Nazca lines probably did, archaeologists speculate that the forms may also have had a very important geographical use as well. Significantly, although some of the geoglyphs are found singly and some in groups of 50 or more others, all of the sites containing the structure so far have corresponded almost perfectly with ancient transportation routes that ran between desert oases and between the Andes Mountains and the coast. Additionally, all seem to be located in areas of high visibility, such as the side of hills, or in regions where travel would have been easier, such as through valleys and pampas plains. In the pre-Hispanic era in South America, travel through the vast desert regions would have been difficult and arduous, and it would stand to reason that certain types of tracks or trails would have to be laid that connected with the large and widely scattered civilizations and pilgrimage sites of the time. By marking these trails with geoglyphs, particularly ones depicting a caravan of llamas, the main mode of transportation, the forms would serve as an obvious signpost for travelers going from one settlement or city to the next. Not only would the figures indicate routes linking cities and towns, some researchers believe, but some of the shapes may also have pointed to the locations of water sources, salt flats, and areas where llama fodder could be found. It should be noted, though, that so far no solid archaeological evidence has been unearthed that would definitively indicate the presence of a llama caravan network busy enough to necessitate such an intricate and extensive array of geoglyphs, signposts, although several Spanish chroniclers of the 16th century made note of large llama caravans traveling across the deserts and plains. Though the Nazca lines were primarily fashioned using what is known as the extractive method, in other words, scraping away the top layer of soil in order to expose the lighter layer underneath, the geoglyphs at Atacama were created using a combination of varying methods. Some were extractive, while some were additive, a method whereby the builders would utilize rocks and carefully arrange piles of soil on top of the ground to make a raised design. Some of the Atacama forms used a combination of both methods, and there has even been research suggesting that some of the figures may also have had paints or pigments applied in order to make them stand out better. The variety and style of the Atacama geoglyphs also suggests that they were probably created by differing, though similar civilizations, and in different time periods, though later civilizations may have refined or altered earlier forms. According to researchers, the earliest geoglyphs, dating from about 800 CE, were likely constructed by the Tiwanaku Empire, regarded as one of the earliest imperial sites in the region. Though its capital lay on the southern shore of Lake Titicaca, about 500 miles from Atacama, the empire ruled for 4 centuries over a vast area that comprised northern Chile, as well as what is today southern Peru and eastern Bolivia. Later geoglyphs were probably built or modified by the Inca, and some of the geoglyphs even appear to date from the 16th century, right around the time of the Spanish conquest. Smaller civilizations, of course, may have contributed to the Atacama geoglyphs as well, utilizing their own unique artistic styles, ritualistic needs, and local knowledge of the best routes for travel. One example of Incan-constructed geoglyphs can be seen clearly on a hillside along a modern highway in the northern Atacama Desert. Known as the Chiza geoglyphs, these figures were constructed using the additive method, with dark stones arranged over lighter terrain. The human figures are somewhat naturalistic, unlike the stylized square humanoids exemplified by the Atacama giant, and they appear to be simply standing with arms raised, though one looks as though he is standing on top of a ladder. Surrounding these figures, there are also some geometric shapes and one curled symbol that also resembles a chandelier. South of Chiza, the geoglyphs at Tiliviche, also created with darker rocks and soil on a lighter landscape, show one of the famed llama caravans, this one accompanied by 2 humanoid figures. In Chugchug, the additive method was likewise used to produce huge, vaguely humanoid forms, as well as a 5-pointed star inside a circle that is topped by a square cross shape. And further to the south, the Pintados geoglyphs, formed by the extractive method of scraping the darker topsoil away to reveal the lighter layer underneath, number more than 400 separate, though relatively small figures, representing humans, animals, and geometric shapes. Though strangely less celebrated than the Nazca lines of Peru, the incredible diversity and astonishing number of geoglyphs found in the Atacama Desert of Chile are a wonder all of their own, and sure to intrigue archaeologists as to their meaning and purpose for many years to come.